You're listening to Glove Up or Shut Up on the Angry Marks Podcast Network.
You're listening to Glove Up or Shut Up on AngryMarks.com with Peter H. and Stevie J. Find them on Twitter at HardcoreCDN and at AngryMarks. And now, for all news, reviews, and interviews in mixed martial arts, it's time for Glove Up or Shut Up from AngryMarks.com.
And welcome everybody to another episode of Glove Up or Shut Up, right here on AngryMarks.com. My name is Peter H. I'm joined once again by my co-host from Omaha, Nebraska, Stevie J.
As you said before the show, Peter, nothing going on this week, nothing at all. Oh, just a little thing called UFC 196, nothing important.
I'm just looking forward to, Rafael Dos Anjos. Is he going to fight Conor McGregor 100%?
He's going to fight him at 0% because he's got a sore you-know-what.
Oh, no, I'm going to play on UFC 2. Oh, wait, that's not even out yet. Never mind.
Yeah, well, Conor McGregor would probably cut a promo about that and say, I'll beat him in the ring, I'll beat him in the octagon, I'll beat him in the game.
You want to tell the folks as we start this show what you texted me after the press conference?
Basically, he said Dos Anjos had a bruised vagina.
I wish I could say he took that out of context, but no, he actually said that.
And I predicted as much at the beginning of our show last week, so pat myself on the back.
So there's a story out on TMZ with Conor McGregor where he's walking by this apartment near the gym he goes to, and he sees a cardboard cutout of himself with the Irish flag. And as he's going to the gym, he says, "Hey mate, I'll come by your place later." And the guy's thinking, "Yeah, right, okay, sure, whatever." After he works out at the gym, comes back, knocks on the door, and there's pictures of him hanging out at the apartment of the fan. Oh, that's pretty cool. Conor McGregor is like the UFC media darling right now. I mean, I'm sure there are cameras following him 24/7.
Yeah, well, you would expect that because they need to fill up their YouTube channel with content promoting the pay-per-view, and what better way to do that with UFC Embedded and UFC Road to the Octagon and UFC Ultimate Insider and all the other shows they'll put him on.
Yeah, if it's got the UFC name on it, he'll be on it for sure, but let's backtrack, because we can talk about Conor McGregor for a little bit here, but let's talk about what happened this past weekend in England. We'll get to Conor McGregor on the show this week in just a moment, but we have to talk about what happened. Bisping Silva in London, England.
Yes, very, very controversial scoring here, depending on whether or not you think that Anderson Silva won either round 3 or round 4, because the judges scored it 48-47 across the board for Bisping. But at the end of that fight, Bisping didn't look like the winner. He looked like a car accident victim, and that's because at the very end of the third round, for those who haven't seen it, and go out of your way if you got Fight Pass, go watch this, because it was a heck of a live main event. Near the end of the third round, Bisping lost his mouthpiece. He signaled to Herb Dean that his mouthpiece was out, and Herb Dean didn't stop the fight, and he reached down like he was going to pick it up, and he just got destroyed with a knee. And this is literally right at the end of the round. Silva just creams him with a knee. It looks like Bisping might be out of it. Silva jumps up on the cage, starts celebrating, thinking it's over. Herb Dean is screaming at him, "It's not over! Fight's not over! Get down here! The fight's not over yet! Get down here now! This fight's not over!" And it takes a whole minute just to get Silva off the cage and back into the octagon to fight the next 2 rounds.
It was an interesting fight, but I don't know where I heard it from. Somebody was trying to say that, oh, this is a different Silva. He's learned. He won't showboat. He's going to take this fight seriously.
Oh, he showboated the whole fight. In fact, he openly stood there and bobbed his head side to side with his hands down like, "Come on, hit me. Try to hit me. I dare you to hit me."
Now, I hate to say this because it sounds condescending, but I'm going to try to say it. It's almost like he went into the lion's den. I'm not making a Ken Shamrock reference. He's going into the enemy territory, so to speak, and he wants to win, beat Bisping for the first time on his home soil. I see the logic in someone saying he should take this fight seriously, that he should not showboat. He's getting up there in age. He is getting older with every fight he is in now.
Well,
He's got to stop doing this.
That's part of what I give him credit for, actually, is that because he's getting older and because he probably can't fight with the same quickness that he used to, he's got to play the mental head games. And he was trying to bait Bisping into playing a game with him. And at one point, I think it was in the second round, Bisping just looks at him, "Really? Are you kidding me?" and just walks away. Like, "I'm not going to play this game with you. Forget it."
Bisping showed maturity, but you're right. At the end of that fight, it was like, if it was pride scoring, do you think Silva would have won this fight?
Oh, absolutely. If you scored based on who won the whole fight, you would probably give it to Anderson Silva. If you score on the 10-point system, 3 rounds to 2 Bisping, because I definitely give him the first, the second, and probably the fourth, but I can't in good conscience give Bisping the third because he just got wrecked by that knee. Even if it was at the very last second, he can't be called the winner of that round because he got creamed. And it's his own fault, too. He admitted it in the post-fight interview. He said, "That was a mental mistake. I shouldn't have been so concerned with my mouthpiece. I fucked up. I did it. It's my bad. I lost that round."
You know, I'm not going to pat myself on the back here, but what's the one thing I always say at the end of every show?
Never leave it to the judges.
And Silva did exactly that.
Yeah. And he can't have been surprised that Bisping had one idea in mind, and that was to go out there and give the fight of his life. If he wanted to go out there and play around because he's getting older and he needs to try to throw his opponents off guard, that's all well and good, but you got the most motivated Michael Bisping of his entire life. He was crying afterwards because all of what I'm about to say is true. This was the fight he had wanted his whole life. This was the fight he had dreamed about. This was the fight not only that he couldn't have possibly ever imagined having and finally got to have, but he got to have it at home in front of a hometown crowd. And he won. So there's no way Anderson Silva should have thought, if I just go out there and bob my head and wait my time and pick the perfect shot, I can just win this fight easily. Because Bisping, you were going to need a steamroller to take him down at the O2 in London. He was not going away easy.
And that crowd was pretty quiet, wasn't it?
Well, the preceding fights had done nothing to thrill them.
Yeah, we're not going to go over the entire card because, frankly, man, I said to you off air, the show should have come with a pillow.
Yeah, well, I didn't see the whole card. I only saw the main card, but that part was definitely boring. By the end of the second fight, which was Pickett, I believe, and after that second fight, I had a couple of cans of beer stashed away from the grocery store. I'm like, yep, time to start drinking.
You can get inebriated to your heart's content to see decision after decision after decision. Ugh.
Yeah. You know what I was drinking? Did you see the photo?
No.
I drank Mike's Harder lemonade. Not hard, harder.
Back to Silva. If he can't beat Michael Bisping, who, fucked up, he's got one good eye at this point. If Silva can't beat him in 5 rounds, who can he beat? He beat Diaz, got popped for a drug violation, got suspended for a year, been sitting on the shelf, now he's back and he comes off a loss. He still has some fights on his contract, so my question is to you, who do you put in front of him next?
Base it on the rankings if you wanted to, and Silva slid down to number 6, so there's some guys around him that could be interesting fights for him at this point, guys that when he was the champion he probably never would have seen, but now that he's in the middle of the pack, you could give him a fight like Robert Whittaker or Gegard Mousasi and see how he handles that. And if he can't, then maybe it's time for him to retire. Or you could go the route of he's getting older, the weight cut's hard, he's obviously not what he used to be, so let him go up to 205. He's won fights at 205 before, so maybe now's the time at the tail end of his career to give him some fights at 205 with an opponent that's maybe not in the top 15, but just let him go out there and pretty much have an exhibition match.
Yeah, someone said to me, do you think we'll ever see GSP in the cage again? And thinking about Silva's loss here, I don't think. I said it was on a different show. I said I don't think we'll ever see him in the octagon again. I think GSP is done.
Mm-hmm.
But this loss here against Bisping, I think that the odds of this fight happening between Silva and GSP is next to zero.
Yeah, what advantage would there be in it for GSP? He would probably destroy Anderson Silva at this point, even with a whole year or two off from fighting in the octagon. He'd probably still destroy him.
I know he signed that big fight deal a couple years ago. He still has some fights on that contract.
Like 10. He signed a huge contract.
Yeah. But, you're going to give him a scrub?
I don't know. I'm not saying that's what you have to do. I'm saying there are options. If they just want to use him as somebody that'll be a draw for a crowd, you can go that route. If that's what they want Anderson Silva to be. And if they want him to find his way back into title contention, then he can fight those guys in the middle of the pack who are ranked right about where he is right now.
I don't know. I'm just...
we can belabor
I'm trying to put my fantasy booking hat on, and I'm trying to think who I would put in that fight against Silva at 205. And this is some intriguing matchups, but
let me
just
simplify it for you. Let's just go with the fact that Gegard Mousasi won his fight with Alice Leitas in the co-main event, so do Silva and Mousasi.
I was thinking Silva, put him up at 205, put him up against someone like the Mauler.
I guess you could do that, but we can speculate till the cows come home. There's no way to decide this. It's up to Dana White, Joe Silva, and Anderson Silva.
So 48-47 across the board for Bisping. That was the official decision. Now Silva has protested the decision, calling for an overturning of the result due to, corrupt officiating? Or not corrupt judging.
Really? If anybody's got a complaint about that, it should be Brad Pickett's opponent.
There's also another fight we'll talk about in the news where another fighter is protesting a decision, so we'll get there when we get there. But, you're going into the Lion's Den, I said before, and you're trying to impress 3 British judges in Britain. Win the fight. If you're going to leave it to the judges, win the fight. Don't let it go to the judges. Do something. Don't fucking showboat.
Yep. He's got nobody to blame but himself for the loss.
No, exactly. Look in the freaking mirror sometimes. Alright, I gotta calm down. Let's talk about some Bellator.
Sure. You want to talk about Bellator 150?
Yeah, that should calm me down, right?
Yeah, well, you probably were calm just like the audience, just like the people there live, because Czech Congo and Vinicius Carraz was not that exciting.
Yeah.
You were very prophetic in calling that one, Peter. I tried to play Congo up like he could have a good fight, but this wasn't one of them.
I think I'm done with Congo. I hate to say it, because, you really should never say that about a fighter, but, I think I'm done with him.
But in Bellator's heavyweight division, what else are you going to do? He's won 5 out of 6. He's one of their top heavyweights, whether you like it or not.
So, I have to go to the scorecards, because I always do this. He wins via split decision. He won 30-27 and 29-28. Fine. One judge gave 2 of the 3 rounds to his opponent. And I remember this fight because when I heard 30-27, there was one round that Congo definitely didn't win, yet on that one judge's scorecard he did. And I'm thinking, was this fight in Colorado because was the judge high?
I don't know what to tell you.
Well, it was in Kansas, so.
So you want
Congo wins.
You want to know my scores since you're protesting the scores of the fight here?
Yeah.
I'll tell you how I scored the fight. First round, I gave it to Congo. Second round, gave it to Congo. Third round, Carraz.
So you had 29-28.
Yeah.
Well, that's why. 29-28, that's a respectable score. How do you give all 3 rounds to Congo?
I don't see it, because all Congo did in that third round was stall.
I think the judges were just, there's my scorecard. Move on.
And Congo definitely got rocked with a right hand, but Quiroz didn't follow up on it. He let him recover.
What do you do with Quiroz now?
Back to the drawing board. I mean,
but the Bellator drawing board is so.
Well, this heavyweight division is a mess because their champion's been overseas for almost 2 years now, fighting on UFC Fight Pass in Dagestan. So it doesn't really matter if you go back to the drawing board in the heavyweight division because they don't even have a champion to challenge. So you might just as well.
There's got to be a clause in the contract. If you're a champion, you don't defend in a calendar year, we can strip you.
Well, they could announce that, but they don't. They must either think they can get him back, or they must think we don't have a better plan, so we don't need to.
All right, David Rickles and Bobby Cooper.
I predicted a one-sided destruction. That's pretty much what it was. It only took 3 minutes and 49 seconds for David Rickles to just blast him.
Do you ever think we'll see Rickles in UFC?
Yeah, that's a problem because he's very good against the middle-of-the-road lightweights in Bellator. But when he gets in there with somebody like Michael Chandler, he gets picked apart. I'm not saying that he can't get over the hump because maybe his training will get that much better and his cardio will get that much better and everything about him will get that much better. But if he's not able to crack the top of the pecking order in Bellator's lightweight division, why do we think he can do that in UFC?
So he's basically the Uriah Faber of Bellator.
My opinion of Faber and your opinion of Faber have always been completely different, so.
Well, that's a good thing about this show. We can have different opinions on fighters. Like, I really don't like Ben Askren, for example, and you're okay with him.
I just think if people don't like Ben Askren's style, then they should do something about it to try and beat him. It's, honestly, I'll say the same thing about Czech Congo. I'm not as big a fan of Congo, but I will say I respect the guy because he wins fights his way, and people can't stop him from doing it. If somebody could, I'd give him all the credit in the world.
All right. Speaking of someone who's getting a lot of respect, Kendall Grove beating Francisco France with a knockout in the second round at 35 seconds.
Yeah, his striking really has gotten better. With that first improved performance against Joey the Executioner Beltran, I wasn't sure if that was just Kendall Grove beating a guy who was shot and easily beatable, or if Kendall Grove was really getting that much better. But he was in there with a quality opponent this time, 13-3-1, not a guy that was long in the tooth and maybe had too many fights, and his counter-striking was just perfect in this fight. The only thing he did wrong in the first round was he just stood there and let Kiko France kick him in the leg over and over again because he was waiting for the counter shot. So finally, in the second round, he just decided no more leg kicks, and he just clobbered him with a right hand and dropped him.
And it's like, did anyone get the number of that truck?
Yeah, it was a walk-off home run type of shot. He knew the fight was over. He had to go to the ground because the referee wasn't there right away. But the one or two shots he landed on the ground were entirely academic because France was out cold.
All right. Chucko Willis beating Gaston Reno via unanimous decision, and Rebecca Ruth beating Lena Ochinkanov by unanimous decision as well. So
I believe we decided the pronunciation, and if I remember right from Jimmy Smith and Sean Grand, it was Ovichnikova.
Okay.
Ovichnikova.
Yeah, some Russian names I'm good at, some there's too many vowels.
But there's not too many vowels in this one. Just look at all the consonants and sound it out. Ovichnikova. It's not that complicated.
Anyways, Rebecca Ruth won that fight by unanimous decision.
Yeah, everybody was touting Ovichnikova as this big prospect, but I looked at her record coming into that fight, and she was a great kickboxer, had won a bunch of medals and titles in kickboxing, but she'd lost 3 out of her last 5 in MMA, and I thought, is she really that hot as shit if she can't transition from kickboxing to MMA? So I picked the 5-1 Rebecca Ruth to win this fight, and sure enough, she went out there and delivered. She was the stronger fighter. Ovichnikova couldn't take her down. She was blasting Ovichnikova on the feet and just out-muscling her and outworking her and just never let Ovichnikova do anything to her.
Someone just sent me a photo for Cormier Jones 2.
Yeah.
It was from John Jones. He's basically trolling Daniel Cormier by putting a picture. It says, Cormier with the UFC belt over the shoulder of the dad from Family Matters. John Jones is trying to really just pick at the... I'm not saying he's Chael's son in school of thought, but sometimes he's just trying to...
push buttons?
Like, yeah. I mean, it's the whole Bisping Silva thing we talked about earlier. It's funny how people will send me stuff in the middle of the show. It's just like, stop. They don't know we're recording. It's like, God damn it. All right. So we've been holding off long enough. We have to talk about the UFC show this weekend.
Absolutely, positively. It's time for Conor McGregor and Nasty Nate Diaz.
Do you think the person in charge of censoring the press conference 2 days before the fight will have as much exercise as he did with Data 5000 and Kimbo Slice?
I don't remember them censoring anything from that press conference. That whole thing was just one long, I don't give a shit, and fuck you, motherfucker, fuck you. That's all they said to each other was just curse words and anger. Oh, and everybody's favorite quote now on every meme generator, I'm major against that. Nate Diaz just goes on a tirade about how he thinks everybody's using steroids and Conor McGregor is using steroids. And McGregor flips out and he goes, steroids, I'm major against that. So everybody is making drops now of things like whatever you're opposed to, and then I'm major against that.
All right, so let's go from the bottom and work our way up to the top because this is a stacked card. And I do want to bring out one thing that was brought to my attention. I love when I get emails, like, just out of the blue. Did you hear about this? Did you hear about this? The Brandon Thatch fight against CR the Great. Did you hear about this one? Well, it was supposed to be on the Cowboy versus Cowboy card. And it got rescheduled to this show because Brandon Thatch's medicine that he's taking for God knows what is being banned by the Pennsylvania Athletic Commission. So they booked the fight to Vegas where the medicine's allowed. It's a different way. It's like, well, I can't take my pills here, but I can take it over here.
I think the term is actually commission shopping.
Oh, commission shopping, right. Okay. Blah, 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 blah. No, wait, that was Vegas wouldn't allow that anyways. I mean, the Fight Pass cards, you got Diego Sanchez and Jim Miller on Fight Pass. Are you kidding me? Is this the case where fighters want to fight on the prelims to be the main event of something?
No, I don't think you get any bump off of being the main event of Fight Pass.
So who do you have in that one, Sanchez or Miller?
I think Jim Miller probably has a little more left in the tank than Diego at this point.
I don't want to say Battle of the Gatekeepers, but...
Kind of.
I hate saying Miller's a gatekeeper because he's very talented. Yeah. But I think, didn't his brother just get cut a couple weeks ago? So maybe if he loses, maybe it's a loser leaves town match. On the Fox Sports 1 card, I mean, Elkins, Skelly, Miranda, Guimaraes, Eric Silva, and Nordine Taylor, that would be good. And the aforementioned Thatch Sire the Great fight. That's Fox Sports 1, TSN, or Fight Network. Check your local listings for that one. Main card, we got Amanda Nunes and Valentina Shlevenko. I got Nunes. What about you?
Shlevenko could be surprising in this one. She looked good in her UFC debut.
Sarah Kaufman.
That's right. She won a split decision, and a lot of people thought Kaufman was the heavy favorite going into that one because Shlevenko was the newcomer, so I wouldn't just completely rule her out against Amanda Nunes here. I think...
Only loss on her record was a TKO in C3 Fights Red River Rivalry in 2010 against Liz Carmouche.
Exactly, so kind of feel like she's a prospect right now, and Nunes, I mean, she's good. She beats most of the people she's supposed to beat. Only fight where she really got creamed was against Kat Zingano. But
There's no shame in that.
No, so probably going to be a very, very competitive fight. I really hesitate to say coin flip, but I kind of think you could flip a coin either way and probably not be wrong about this one. I suppose if you're going to put me on the spot and I absolutely have to pick somebody, I'll go with Shlevenko.
All right. Well,
it's only
has 4-1 in the UFC. I mean, only loss was against Ngannou, and she's got 3 TKOs and a submission, so she can beat you striking and she can beat you via tap out. So
The line's so close on this one. I think there could be an upset, though, because Shevchenko is only plus 130, and Nunez is a very small favorite at minus 150, so I'd play those odds. If I was in Vegas, I'd play those odds.
Corey Anderson against, who's this guy, Tom Lawler?
Filthy Tom, of course.
Who's he dressing up as? A Freebird? Please let it be a Freebird. Because the weigh-ins, I mean, we always talk about his weigh-in costumes from Dan Severn to Shockmaster to, I mean, there are a few good ones he does, so. But Corey Anderson, do not take him lightly.
Nope, he is minus 310 for a reason, but I'm actually going to go with Filthy Tom in the upset.
Could be a popular pick there. Gian Vellante against Iri Latifi.
Yeah, actually, that's the guy that he beat when he broke into the top 15 there for a cup of coffee. That's who Filthy Tom beat, was Gian Vellante.
That is my coin flip fight.
Odds makers would disagree with you. It's minus 210 for Latifi, and I'll go with him on this one.
Holly Holm against Miesha Tate, which a title fight is the co-main event, not the main event. They used to protect the titles and always have them as the main event, though.
Well, should have been a dual title. You know, it should have been Holm and Tate in one, and it should have been McGregor and Dos Anjos in the other. So you can't really blame UFC for that.
It's a sign of the times, but you know, I'm curious to see this fight because I don't know if her beating Rousey was a fluke or is she the real deal.
Oh,
Tate is a very good test.
It's no fluke. I guarantee you that.
If Tate wins this fight, though, man, that would bring up some questions, that's for sure. Is Holly Holm like Buster Douglas beating Mike Tyson overseas? Or is she the real deal, beating the champ and going to stay the champ for a long time to come? You know, and people are making those comparisons. This is going to be a statement fight. Is she going to be a dominant champion? I mean, she was a dominant boxer, but does she translate those skills to be a dominant champion in the UFC? Now that she's the champ, she's got the big old bullseye on her back.
I don't know what to tell you. I mean, I think Holm is the superior striker in this fight. I think she's favored for a reason. The odds makers see her as a minus 345 and Tate as the plus 285, but I don't like to take away anything from Takedown Tate because, you know, she's the only person that pushed Ronda Rousey to 3 rounds before Rousey got beat, and she's probably just on sheer mental toughness one of the best women in the entire division. Even if Holm is the better striker, that doesn't mean that Tate can't find a way to walk through those punches, take her down, and out-wrestle her on the ground. So I'm going to pick Holm, but I don't think Tate is as much of a dog as she is right now with the odds makers. I think she's got a very good chance to pull off yet another upset in this weight class. I mean, it's already volatile with Rousey losing and Holm being crowned. Who says it couldn't happen again? Who says lightning can't strike twice? It could. I'm not picking it, but it could.
Absolutely. All right, main event, Conor McGregor at 170. Not 145, not 155, but 170 against Nate Diaz.
Well, let's be realistic about it. That's Conor's walking around weight before he cuts to featherweight. So, really, it just means he doesn't have to cut weight for this fight. He can be fat and happy and come in ready to go without having to cut a whole bunch of weight.
Well, Diaz at first wanted a 165.
Yeah, well, that's been bandied back and forth at the press conference and in the media. I don't know what the real weight was supposed to be. They've argued about it until they're both blue in the face, and I'm a little bit tired of hearing about it. It's whatever it is. You know, Nate Diaz took this fight on short notice. McGregor was already coming up in weight class to take a fight with Dos Anjos, so fine. They're both going to fight at 170, whatever. It doesn't matter.
Now, there is talk, and I can't believe I'm going to say this, but if Conor beats Diaz in convincing fashion, the scuttlebutt is, scuttlebutt, that's good. 170 could be his next fight against Lawler. I just don't get it. Like, why is he freezing out the 145ers, leapfrogging over 155 because the champ hurt his foot? Oh, he's hurt? I'll take the belt from the next guy then. What? This isn't a video game. I'm just I'm pissed off is what it is. I don't think he should be handed a title shot at 170 on a fucking silver platter.
I doubt he's going to get it on a silver platter, but I think as long as Conor McGregor keeps winning in every weight class that he goes up to, it's kind of hard to argue with him going up to the next weight class if he wants to keep doing that, because eventually he's going to reach a point where guys are just way too big for him, and he's probably getting borderline to that right now, but in the meantime, they can make money.
I would say if he wants to challenge for the 170 belt, I mean, challenging for 155, that's one thing, because it's the next step after 145. But if you're jumping from 145 to 170, if they give him that title shot, he should drop the 145 strap.
Well, Frankie Edgar pretty much agree with you on that point. He said something to the effect of they can't expect him to hold the belt hostage while he goes and fights at all these other weights. They either got to make him vacate the title or make him defend it, one or the other.
Can you imagine Bruce Buffer saying, and now the current defending lightweight, featherweight, and welterweight? No, hell no.
No, and I already said this once on this show, but he's going to find out there's a murderer's row at welterweight if he really does try to fight there full time. It's as if lightweight wasn't full of killers all on its own. If he really wants to go up to welterweight and fight with the likes of Robbie Lawler and Rory McDonald, well, best of luck to him.
Can you imagine the promos if they ever did McGregor and Aries? It'd be like the loud talker and the silent talker.
Well, I've never had a problem with that about Aries, because he does his talking in the octagon, and he's one of the best when he does, so he doesn't need to say much other than that.
Now, going to this fight between McGregor and Diaz, you know, Diaz is going to come out there with a really good game plan. The one thing that fight camp notoriously is they game plan the shit out of their fights. Do you think they found a weakness in McGregor? I mean, it's not like you give him much tape over the last few fights.
You know, I honestly would think McGregor would have a better chance of scouting Nate Diaz than the other way around, because he's been a student of the game since before he was ever in UFC, and he's been looking at all these guys for a long time, whereas he's so new on the scene in UFC that a lot of them are just like, is he for real?
Yeah, no, it's scary to think that he could knock out Diaz in less than a minute, but it could happen.
Well, the odds makers sure seem to think so based on how wide of a favorite he is right now.
How much of a favorite?
I believe it was minus 435 last time I looked.
Holy shit.
They're not giving Nate Diaz much of a chance in this. But he did take the fight on
Diaz
short
wins the shock of the world.
Yeah. Honestly, kind of a shock of the world to go all the way up to 170 when you were the featherweight champion, so either way, but I think it's more of a factor of they just won't give Nate Diaz that credit because he didn't have time to put in a full camp for this fight, so how good could he possibly be? Especially if it goes to later rounds, not that Conor McGregor thinks it will. Mystic Mac has already said he'll end it in the first round.
Now, what do you think will happen when they say touch gloves and they both flip each other off?
The whole place will erupt in cheers?
Probably. Oh, I'd be a fool to pick Diaz. I'm going to go with McGregor, but I'm going to say, call me crazy, this fight goes to round 2.
All right, but still the same result.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I got McGregor winning round 2.
All right.
Is this a 5-round fight?
Yeah, it is the main event, so pretty sure it is.
All right, do we got time to talk about Bellator this weekend?
We can.
It's just, it's a busy weekend. I mean, there's UFC, Bellator, and for those in Montreal, there's going to be an IWS show. It's one of their bigger shows of the year. They're bringing in Rey Mysterio, so if you're in the Montreal area, that'll be a fun event. And I've been told not to wear my Leafs jersey, Stevie, so don't worry, I won't get killed in Montreal.
That would be for the best.
Although, remember, I did wear my Leafs toque at the Bell Center for UFC, and I lived to tell the tale, so.
You did.
Alright, so Caldwell and Warren, that's this week?
That's right. And let me tell you, Darian Caldwell is not a happy camper right now.
What now?
Well, he's a little upset that Marcos Galvao and Eduardo Dantas didn't have their bantamweight title fight last week for the aforementioned Queiroz versus Congo card. That was the original main event, and he thinks these guys have been, let me use the colorful language he did since I can't think of any other way to paraphrase it. He thinks they're tiptoeing around each other, but they're both a bunch of pussies. If they're not going to fight each other, let the guys who want to fight. And that's what he said, quote unquote.
Come on.
Well, this is like the second time they've tried to book this fight, and the second time it's fallen apart. So I can kind of understand where he's coming from, that he feels like the bantamweight division is being held hostage while these two guys just can't seem to get around to fighting each other.
So, in this main event, you've talked to both fighters, right?
Yes.
Now, did any of them drop a hint as to what their fight plan is going to be?
Well, Joe Warren always says he doesn't scout his opponents and he doesn't believe in that shit. He's just going to go out there and do what he does best, because if he starts game planning for anybody else, then that gives them a mental edge over him. Whereas if he goes out there and executes what he knows how to do, he'll win a fight. So hard to argue with the record of success he's had, given he's been a dual Bellator champion. He's won titles at both bantamweight and featherweight. So can't really argue with Joe Warren's philosophy on that too much. And Caldwell is just so livid and pissed off right now that he doesn't give a shit whether it's Joe Warren or anybody else in the cage in front of him. He just wants to go out there and cream somebody, so he's not really worrying about strategy. But as far as strategy goes, I think we all know what to expect. They're both world-class wrestlers. Caldwell was a national champion. You know how many titles that Warren had at Greco-Roman wrestling and all sorts of competitions. So expect a lot of wrestling. And then when they stifle each other with wrestling, expect them to trade hands. But both of these guys can say whatever they want. They're going to try to get it to the ground. It's more of a question of who's going to get there first. And you know what? As much as I really think that Joe Warren is probably 9 times out of 10 the better wrestler, he's got that age factor creeping up on him, and it hasn't bitten him yet. But as we saw with Anderson Silva, once the age does become a factor, it really becomes a factor.
Now, I mean, I'm going to go with I'm going to go with Caldwell, but I would not be surprised if Warren wins.
I'm making the same pick you are for the same reason.
All right, Gilbert Smith and Fernando Gonzalez.
This is an intriguing one because Michael Venom Page, was supposed to be in this fight, but pulled out for reasons that have yet to be disclosed by Bellator or anybody else. And Gonzalez is undefeated in his last 4 mixed martial arts fights, but he did lose a kickboxing fight to Paul Daly that doesn't count on his MMA record, so I guess you can make of that what you will, but he is 4 straight wins in a very crowded welterweight division. You would think with a 5th one, he might be knocking on that door for a title shot, but then of course Gilbert Smith vacated his RFA title just to take this fight on short notice. So, who do you think's going to win, Peter? Let me get your pick.
I really like Gilbert Smith, and you know, I hate saying this because it's come to be a cliche on this show, but he's playing with house money. He basically traded in the RFA title to get the call up on short notice to Bellator, and you know, he's cashing in his Money in the Bank briefcase here, so to speak. And yeah, I think he's gonna make the most of it. I think he's gonna win. Not saying how. I don't really know how he's gonna do it, but I think he's gonna go out there, you know, and balls to the wall, and it's gonna overwhelm Gonzalez.
I'm gonna go ahead and say Gilbert Smith by submission. I'm gonna agree with you.
All right, so go to Yamauchi against Bubba Jenkins.
This is an always a bridesmaid, never a bride kind of fight because these two have been knocking on the door at featherweight for a while now. Jenkins could have had a title shot, but he got submitted by Karakanyan, and Yamauchi has won every fight except for the fight in the Bellator featherweight tournament that he lost. So it's like, what do you do with 2 guys that are this close to getting a title shot and never do? Well, you match them up against each other and see who comes out better. And the thing that I really like about Yamauchi in this fight is that we've already seen Jenkins get absolutely wrecked by Karakanyan with a submission. And Yamauchi is one of the most dangerous submission artists that this featherweight division has. I mean, he wins almost 80% of his fights by submission. So, if you want to talk about styles making fights, then Yamauchi has to absolutely love this, because the only way Bubba Jenkins can overcome him on the ground is to knock him out before it gets there. Can he do that? Yes. Do I predict it? No. I'll go with Yamauchi.
I'm going with Jenkins.
All right. Well, we'll see what happens, but I respect him either way because he's a former guest of our show and a good friend, so I wouldn't mind if he wins. I'm just not picking it in this instance.
All right, let's talk some news of the week. And
oh, you don't want to talk about Joe Taimenglo and Sirwan Kakai?
Oh, go ahead. Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I was kind of being sarcastic when I said that.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I'll say I picked Taimenglo by unanimous decision, but it's not a fight to get excited about.
All right, well, let's talk some news. And Gegard Mousasi called out Vitor Belfort. What do you think?
Well, he's calling out a lot of people. I believe he also called out Lyoto Machida.
Yeah, but it's more newsworthy if he's calling out Vitor.
Why? Because they're both Brazilian? I mean,
well, there's probably a beef there somewhere.
Lyoto Machida is Brazilian too, so.
No, but there's probably a beef there between Belfort. I'm just trying to figure out what I know his game plan is there. He wants a big name fight, and you're right, he has a choice A or B here, but I would go with Belfort. But Belfort might just look at him like, no, I'm good. Alright, so, I mean, we talked about Silva protesting, which, I mean, we already talked about that. I don't want to get back into that because that's just, it's frustrating when someone does that. So,
are you saying there's never a justified reason for a protest, though?
Oh, there is reasons, absolutely. I'm just saying, don't showboat for the fight or during the fight and then complain about the scorecards.
Right, I agree. So we can move on.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. Do you think we're going to have marquee fights on Fight Pass in the future, or was this just a one-off?
I think they'll find an excuse or a reason to do it again. I think there'll be some sort of fight that's taken place overseas with somebody that's really popular that is getting to fight in front of their hometown crowd. You know, I could see them doing, for example, a fight night in Sweden with Alexander Gustafsson and making it a Fight Pass exclusive. I could see that.
All right, so after the fight night in London, or in England, sorry, Bisping wants to fight Nick Diaz. Talk about the promos again.
That would be a fun one.
I want a countdown special with those two. That'd be interesting, but we'll see what happens there. Yeah, we talked. We joked about Dos Anjos breaking his foot in training, and there's a story here. I just wrote the headline down. After Dos Anjos broke his foot, Bellator's Kakai kicks a little easier. I want to tone it down in training, just a little bit. Like, dude broke his foot. Don't, you know what I mean? That's a little much. Do you remember the guy who bet almost $250,000 on Holly Holm?
Yeah, he's putting like $78,000 on Misha Tate.
So does he know something we don't? Is he like gone Back to the Future or what?
I think he's just playing the odds on Tate being the underdog and getting another upset. If he thinks it paid off the first time, it might pay off the second. And if he's right, then look at how much he's banked off of just 2 fights. So can you really blame him for trying?
All right, we'll save the next story till the end of the show because you have a good tie in there. Let's go with UFC Fight Night 87 has added Gunnar Nelson and Albert Tumanov.
Okay, that's a quality fight.
And Hector Lombard got microphone. Oh boy. Yep. He's challenging Neil Magny and questions McDonald and Damian Maia. So apparently after Jones's fight with Cormier, the rematch here, he wants to fight the Mauler to get rid of any doubt.
All right. Well, first he's got to beat Cormier, so let's not put our eggs in one basket too quickly there, Mr. Jones.
I know you think you're hot shit, but Cormier, that's one guy you do not want to overlook. I mean, you said it for another fighter, but Cormier's like, you know, is he serious about this? Like, I'm right here, and I learned from that last fight. I guess I have to talk about this. I told you about, I already said that one. Okay, let's go with the one I saved for last year. Jim Ross has compared Conor McGregor and Nate Diaz to Ric Flair and Roddy Piper.
Well, there's definitely a colorful relationship between the respective individuals in the comparison, so I can kind of see where he's coming from.
Interesting story, and there's a reason I saved this story for last, boss.
Absolutely, because on WrestlingObserver.com this week, you'll be able to read my interview with good old JR, Jim Ross, because I got a chance to talk to him for about 20 minutes as part of an interview to promote his debut on Access TV calling New Japan Pro Wrestling.
And will this be available on YouTube?
Yes, indeed. It'll be embedded in the article, so you can check it out there.
Alright, so that's all the news on my list. Is there anything on yours I forgot to mention?
Nope, we've covered everything, so everybody go watch UFC 196 this weekend. Order it on pay-per-view, go to your local bar, whatever you gotta do. You don't want to miss Conor McGregor and Nate Diaz, one of the most talked about fights of the last month, even though it's only been a couple of weeks that it's actually been official. It's been a very hot topic, and it's going to be a very explosive fight. And co-main event, bantamweight title, you gotta love that. We'll see if Holly Holm can get it done in her very first title defense, or if Miesha Tate proves that lightning can strike twice. And then, just for fun, I want to encourage everybody to tune in to Bellator 151, because if you got Spike TV, you don't even have to pay for that one. You don't have to go to the bar. You don't have to order it on pay-per-view. You get to see the baddest man on the planet, Joe Warren, and the Wolf, Darian Caldwell, mix it up in the main event for no money whatsoever. Nothing down, no payment required. Just tune on to Spike and tune in and enjoy.
And next week, the only major show on my schedule is World Series of Fighting with Brian Foster and Justin Gaethje.
WSOF 29 from, let's see.
Colorado.
Yeah, that's right. The Bank of Colorado Arena in Greeley, Colorado.
I've got Loveland, Colorado on my list.
I believe it's Greeley, but it's probably one of those things where it's like right on the border between two towns, so doesn't even matter.
For sure. And then the week after that, we got UFC Fight Night 84. Is that the Rothwell card, or? I can't recall. Not the Australia card, no, that's Mir and Hunt. So we got a quiet week next week, and then we got a Fight Night the week after in good old Australia. So that's the show this week. Any shout-outs you want to do, Stevie?
Just a shout-out to everybody at Access TV for putting me in touch with JR and giving me a chance to talk to such a legendary wrestling commentator, announcer, and you always learn something new when you talk to JR, because he's got a wealth of knowledge about this business, so I feel enlightened just having talked to him, and I wish I could have had more time, but he had a very busy schedule, so I'll take what I can get, and it was a lot of fun.
Alright, well, for Stevie J, I'm Peter H., the Hardcore Canadian. Thanks for listening, and as I always say, never leave it to the judges. Good night, everybody.